The galaxy was in turmoil. The different alien factions had united in an alliance, determined to conquer Earth. Among these factions, one alien race stood out, powerful, relentless, and ruthless. Their leader, General Zarek, was known for his pride and arrogance. The humans, he believed, were nothing more than a nuisance, weak and unworthy of his attention. One day, during a conference with the Galactic Council, General Zarek made a public statement that echoed through every corner of the galaxy. "You humans are cowards," he declared, his voice booming across the communication screens. "You hide behind your technology, but I've seen your soldiers. You don't fight with honor. You hide, you run, and when things get tough, you surrender. My army could wipe you out without a single casualty. All we need is one soldier to defeat your entire planet." His words sparked anger and disbelief among Earth's leaders. The human race had fought long and hard to survive in a galaxy full of stronger, more advanced species. Yet here was an alien general mocking their very existence. General Zarek's arrogance was clear, and it struck a nerve with everyone who heard his message. In a private meeting, the Human Council debated how to respond. They knew they couldn't afford to back down, not only for the sake of their planet, but for the future of humanity in the galaxy. "Is he right?" one council member asked, his voice filled with doubt. "Are we truly just cowards, hiding behind our machines? Are we weak in the face of the galaxy's might?" "No," Captain Tessa Hawk replied, standing up. Her eyes were filled with fire, and her tone was filled with determination. "We are not cowards. We are humans. And if General Zarek thinks one of his soldiers can defeat us, then we will show him just how wrong he is." Tessa Hawk was not just any soldier. She was one of the best. A decorated hero with countless victories under her belt, she had seen the worst the galaxy had to offer and had survived. She had fought against alien invaders and survived horrific battles. But never before had she faced an enemy so full of arrogance and hatred. "I'll go," she said, her voice steady. "I'll face him and his army, and I'll show them what humanity is really made of." The council was silent for a moment, stunned by her bravery. But then, one by one, they nodded in agreement. There was no turning back. Tessa Hawk was their best chance. As she prepared for her mission, Captain Hawk didn't look back. She knew that this was more than just a fight for survival. It was a fight to show the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. The eyes of the galaxy were on Earth, waiting for them to either fall or rise. Tessa would make sure humanity rose. Captain Tessa Hawk stood alone in the war room, her reflection staring back at her from the glass walls. The hum of the base around her felt distant, almost like a dream. For a moment, she let herself think about the enormity of what she was about to do. She wasn't just preparing for another mission. She was preparing to face an alien general who had publicly mocked the human race. The eyes of the galaxy were on her, and failure wasn't an option. Her mind flashed back to her past, her childhood, growing up in the small town of Arkham on Earth. She remembered the tough lessons she learned from her father, a former soldier. "You don't back down, Tess," he had said many times. "You don't quit just because it gets hard. You show the world what you're made of, even when no one believes in you." Those words stuck with her, and now, standing on the edge of this mission, they gave her strength. Tessa was no stranger to battle. She had fought in countless wars, and every time she stepped onto the battlefield, she did so with courage and grit. But this was different. The enemy was no longer just a faceless army. It was General Zarek and his pride. The stakes had never been higher. She adjusted her uniform, the weight of the metal armor reminding her of the task ahead. It wasn't just the alien general she had to defeat. It was everything that represented humanity's struggle to be recognized in a galaxy full of stronger species. As she suited up, the mission briefing continued. Tessa's team had prepared for every possible outcome, studying the alien forces' technology, combat tactics, and military strategies. But no matter how much they knew, they couldn't predict exactly how things would unfold once she was on the front lines. One thing was clear, though. She couldn't rely on anyone else. This was her fight. Captain Hawk. A voice broke through her thoughts. It was Lieutenant Daniels, one of her most trusted officers. The shuttle's ready. We'll be waiting for you at launch. Tessa nodded, her face hardening. She offered no words of comfort, only a tight smile. She had learned long ago that leadership didn't come with easy promises. It came with decisions and responsibility. And right now, the responsibility was hers alone. As she boarded the shuttle, she gazed at the stars outside the window. Earth was a small dot in the vast expanse of space, but to her, it was everything. She couldn't let the galaxy's judgment define them. They were more than just survivors. They were warriors. And she would prove it. The journey to the alien homeworld was long and silent. Tessa spent her time preparing herself mentally, going over the mission plan in her head. She thought about the people she was fighting for, the lives at stake, and the pride she carried as a soldier. When the shuttle finally entered the alien atmosphere, the cold, hostile landscape below her filled her with a new sense of purpose. She had arrived. This was it. The time to prove humanity's strength had come. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere of the alien homeworld, its engines humming as Tessa Hawk peered through the small window. Below her, the planet's surface was harsh and barren, with jagged mountains and vast stretches of desert. It looked nothing like Earth, where the green fields and blue skies symbolized life and hope. This world was a reminder of what could happen if a race lost its way. A planet ravaged by war, filled with an arrogant and ruthless species. As the shuttle touched down, Tessa felt a chill crawl up her spine. She had prepared for this moment for weeks, but now that she was here, it felt different. The weight of General Zarek's challenge hung over her. She had no backup, no reinforcements. She was alone on this planet, facing an enemy that had crushed countless others. But she was human, and that gave her an edge that no alien force could match. The shuttle doors opened with a hiss, and Tessa stepped out onto the rocky ground. The air was thick with dust, and the wind howled across the barren landscape. There was no sign of life, no welcoming committee. It was as if the planet itself was waiting for her to make her move. Tessa took a deep breath, adjusting her helmet and tightening her grip on her weapon. She knew she couldn't just march into the heart of the enemy's stronghold. She had to be smart, use the terrain to her advantage. The alien general might have underestimated her, but she wasn't about to give him the chance to make that mistake again. She moved quickly, finding cover behind a large rock formation. Her eyes scanned the horizon, watching for any sign of movement. There was a faint buzzing sound in the distance, the hum of alien machinery, and she knew the enemy was close. She had no idea what kind of forces she would be up against, but she wasn't going to wait around to find out. Tessa checked her communicator one last time, but the signal was dead. She was cut off from Earth and from any help. The reality of her situation sank in. There would be no rescue, no backup, and no one to save her if things went wrong. She was entirely on her own. But that thought didn't scare her. It made her more determined. She had trained for years for moments like this, moments when the odds were stacked against her. She had faced death before and walked away, and she would do it again. A shadow moved across the ground ahead of her, and she quickly ducked behind the rocks. She peered around the edge and saw the silhouette of an alien soldier, armed and patrolling the area. The alien was walking toward her, unaware of her presence. Tessa's heart raced, but her breathing stayed steady. She raised her rifle, aimed carefully, and fired. The shot was clean, and the alien soldier crumpled to the ground without a sound. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. She moved quickly to hide the body, making sure there were no traces of her presence. The alien forces were likely searching for her, and she couldn't afford to be caught off guard. Every move she made had to be calculated, every decision weighed carefully. As she disappeared into the alien landscape, she knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. General Zarek stood on the balcony of his command center, overlooking the dark, rocky plains below. His eyes narrowed as he watched the reports come in. The human soldier, Captain Tessa Hawk, had already caused more trouble than he expected. His soldiers, seasoned and powerful, had been dispatched to capture her, yet one by one, they were being picked off. It wasn't just the loss of his men that angered him, it was the challenge to his pride. The human had dared to defy him. He clenched his fists. "I told you humans were weak, but this one." Zarek's voice was low, full of contempt. "She is different." He turned to his second in command, a tall alien officer with smooth metallic skin. "Prepare the elite forces. We will end this now. I want her captured alive." The officer bowed his head. "Yes, General." Zarek's mind raced. He had underestimated Tessa, but that would not happen again. His elite soldiers were some of the deadliest in the galaxy. They had faced and conquered entire worlds. This human, this woman, had no chance against them. At least, that's what he told himself. His pride refused to believe otherwise. The general's communication screen flickered on, and he saw the face of one of his commanders. The officer looked nervous, and Zarek's patience was wearing thin. "Speak," Zarek ordered. "My lord," the officer began, "we've lost contact with 2 more patrols. It seems the human soldier is more skilled than we thought." Zarek's eyes flashed with anger. "I don't care about your patrols. I want her dead. No more excuses." "Understood, General," the officer said quickly, bowing before ending the transmission. Zarek paced around the room, his boots clicking against the cold metal floor. He had to end this, quickly. His reputation as a conqueror was on the line. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that this human wasn't just a threat to his plans. She was a symbol of everything he despised. She was defying him in front of his entire army. The very thought of it made his blood boil. Back on the ground, Tessa was unaware of the storm building in the enemy's command center. She had already evaded several patrols, using the terrain to her advantage. Her instincts, honed over years of fighting, guided her through the alien landscape with deadly precision. She knew that the aliens wouldn't stop until she was either dead or captured, and she wasn't about to make it easy for them. But as the day wore on, she began to feel the pressure mounting. The distance between her and the alien forces was shrinking. She had already taken out several soldiers, but she couldn't keep fighting forever. Her ammunition was limited, and the alien forces were relentless. Tessa knew she couldn't outrun them forever. Soon, she would have to face the full force of the alien army. But she wasn't afraid. She had faced overwhelming odds before and won. The question wasn't whether she could survive. It was whether the general would realize too late that humans could never be underestimated. Tessa crouched behind a jagged rock formation, her breathing steady, every sense alert. The wind howled through the barren landscape, carrying the scent of the alien world with it. She had been on this planet for hours, evading patrols, outsmarting her enemies at every turn. But she knew that wouldn't last forever. The alien general, General Zarek, had sent his elite soldiers after her, and soon, she wouldn't be able to outrun them. They were closing in. Her eyes scanned the horizon. There in the distance, the shimmer of heat signatures showed that the alien forces were approaching. Tessa knew she didn't have much time. Her ammunition was running low, and the alien soldiers were much better equipped. But there was one thing they didn't have, something she had learned over the years of fighting. Humans could adapt. Humans could think on their feet. She smiled to herself, her fingers tightening around the weapon. It wasn't just her training that would save her. It was her ability to improvise. Tessa had fought many battles before, but this one was different. It wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight to prove humanity's worth. The galaxy had underestimated them for too long. Now, it was her turn to show them that they had made a terrible mistake. Suddenly, a sound broke her concentration. A soft thud, followed by a low murmur. Tessa's heart raced, and she swiftly moved to the edge of her cover, peering out just enough to see what was happening. Ahead, 2 alien soldiers were moving through the rocky terrain, unaware of her presence. They were too confident, too sure of themselves. Tessa's fingers itched for her rifle. She waited. Timing was everything. When the soldiers moved closer, she aimed carefully, her breaths steady. Then, with a precise squeeze of the trigger, the first alien fell, the shot echoing across the vast emptiness. The second alien whipped around, startled, but it was already too late. Tessa quickly moved from her position, using the terrain to stay hidden, and took out the second soldier with a well-placed shot to the chest. Her pulse quickened as she took a moment to gather her thoughts. It had been a clean takedown, but it wouldn't go unnoticed. The elite forces would be looking for her now. She had to move, and fast. As she made her way through the rocky outcrops, Tessa thought about the advantage she had. The aliens were stronger, faster, and more advanced, but they lacked one thing that made humans unique: the ability to think beyond the obvious, to use the environment, and their instincts to outwit even the most powerful enemies. Humans had always fought against the odds, and that was their true strength. Tessa stopped in her tracks, hearing the hum of an alien vehicle approaching. It was a scout drone, and it was heading straight for her. If she didn't act quickly, she'd be detected. There was no time to hide or fight. She had to disable it. Fast. With swift precision, she reached into her pack and pulled out a small EMP grenade. She didn't have many of them, but this was the perfect opportunity to use one. She pulled the pin, hurled it toward the drone, and dove for cover. The drone's lights flickered, then died, as the EMP hit its systems. Tessa breathed a sigh of relief, but she didn't waste time. The moment the drone was disabled, she continued her advance. She had to stay ahead of the alien forces and make her way deeper into the enemy territory. In the distance, she saw what she was looking for: a small outpost where she could gather more supplies and possibly get a better vantage point. But she knew it wouldn't be easy. The alien forces would be closing in soon, and they wouldn't be as careless as the soldiers she'd already defeated. But Tessa Hawk wasn't afraid. She wasn't just a soldier. She was humanity's chance to prove that they could fight, survive, and win, no matter the odds. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the alien landscape. Tessa had been on the move for hours, carefully avoiding patrols and ambushes. Her mind was sharp, her senses heightened. She had already faced several challenges, but the hardest part was yet to come. The alien forces had regrouped, and now they were coming after her with everything they had. General Zarek wasn't just angry anymore. He was determined to capture or destroy her. Tessa paused behind a ridge, peering down at the enemy outpost below. The base was heavily guarded, surrounded by a perimeter of soldiers and drones. It was their central command, where the elite alien forces were coordinating their attacks. She knew that if she could reach the control center, she could sabotage their communications and disrupt their operations. It was a risky move, but it was the only chance she had left. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. Every movement had to be precise. One mistake, one wrong step, and the alien forces would overwhelm her. But Tessa was used to high-stakes situations. She had faced danger before, and each time, she had come out on top. This time would be no different. As she made her way closer to the base, Tessa's mind raced with plans and counterplans. She had spent years studying alien technology, learning how to fight their way. She had been trained for moments like this. But this was something else. The alien forces were unlike anything she had ever faced. They were relentless, and General Zarek was a leader like no other. Still, Tessa refused to be intimidated. If there was one thing she had learned in all her years of combat, it was that no enemy was unbeatable. She crouched low, blending into the shadows as she moved. Her pulse quickened, but she didn't let the fear take hold. There was no time for fear. She had to stay focused, stay ahead of the aliens. She reached the outer edge of the base and found a small gap in the security perimeter. It was guarded, but not heavily. Tessa had no choice but to take a chance. She silently moved closer, using the cover of darkness to approach the guards. Two aliens stood just ahead, their weapons ready. Tessa had no intention of being spotted. She drew her knife, the blade sharp and deadly. She moved with the precision of a predator, getting closer to her target. With a quick, fluid motion, she struck, taking out both guards before they even knew what hit them. They fell to the ground, silent as the night. Tessa moved fast, dragging their bodies into the shadows to avoid detection. Once inside the perimeter, Tessa made her way toward the control center. She could feel the weight of the mission pressing on her, but she pushed it aside. This was her moment to prove that humanity wasn't weak, that they weren't just survivors. They were fighters, and she was about to show the galaxy just what that meant. Tessa reached the control center door and crouched, listening for any signs of movement inside. The guards were few, but the technology inside was advanced, far beyond anything Earth had. But Tessa wasn't afraid. She had the skills to fight and the will to win. As she slowly opened the door and slipped inside, she felt the weight of the mission settle over her. She was here to make a difference. As she prepared to plant the explosives that would disable the enemy's communications, Tessa thought about everything she had fought for. Her people, her planet, the legacy of humanity. They may be young in the galaxy, but they were far from weak. Tessa crouched behind a large, weathered structure within the enemy base. Her heart was pounding, but her mind was sharp. She had successfully planted the explosives to disable their communications, but time was running out. The alien forces had already begun to search for her, their advanced technology closing in. She could hear the faint hum of their drones overhead, their searchlights sweeping across the ground. It was only a matter of time before they found her. She glanced at the control center, the epicenter of their operations, just a few meters away. The explosives she had set were a last-ditch effort to slow them down. But if the aliens were clever, they would have backup systems in place. The explosions might not be enough to stop them, but it would give her a small window of opportunity. Tessa took a deep breath and checked her rifle one last time. The weight of the weapon was comforting in her hands. She had been trained to use everything around her to her advantage, whether it was a gun, a blade, or even the terrain itself. She wasn't going to let this mission fail. Not now. The ground suddenly shook beneath her feet, followed by a massive explosion. The enemy's communications tower erupted in a fiery blast, sending a shockwave that rattled Tessa's teeth. She knew she had succeeded. The control center screens went dark, and the base was plunged into chaos. Alien soldiers scattered, trying to restore order. For a brief moment, Tessa saw the confusion in their ranks. The tide was starting to turn. Her heart raced as she saw her chance. She dashed from her cover, moving swiftly and silently. The blast had created a distraction, and the guards were now focused on damage control. This was her moment. Tessa moved with purpose, her eyes scanning the area for any threats. The alien forces were beginning to regroup, but they weren't as coordinated as they had been. They were disoriented, unsure of what had just happened. For the first time, Tessa felt like she had the upper hand. As she neared the heart of the base, a group of alien soldiers appeared in the hallway ahead of her. They had no idea she was coming. Tessa ducked into the shadows, waiting for the right moment. The soldiers moved closer, and she felt her muscles tense. She could hear their footsteps, steady, predictable. The moment they were within range, Tessa sprang into action. She moved quickly, using the element of surprise to take down two of the soldiers before they could react. The others scrambled, but it was too late. She was already upon them, her movements fluid and precise. One by one, the aliens fell, their weapons no match for Tessa's quick reflexes and combat training. When the last soldier was down, Tessa stood over the fallen bodies, catching her breath. She had done it. She had disrupted their command center, taken out their elite soldiers, and created enough chaos to give humanity a fighting chance. The alien general, Zarek, would now understand just how dangerous humanity could be. But Tessa wasn't finished yet. She knew the alien general would not give up easily. He would retaliate, and the battle would only get harder from here. But that was the reality of war. It wasn't about winning every battle. It was about never giving up, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. As the alien forces scrambled to recover, Tessa turned toward the exit. She had proven her point. Humanity wasn't weak. They were a force to be reckoned with. The night had fallen, and Tessa stood atop a cliff overlooking the alien base. The chaos she had caused earlier had given her the briefest of respites. For the first time since her mission began, she had a moment to breathe. The explosions, the confusion, she had disrupted their plans, but the alien forces weren't giving up. The sounds of their regrouping could be heard echoing in the distance. General Zarek was a relentless strategist, and she knew that he would be coming for her soon. The small victory had been satisfying, but Tessa knew the hardest part was ahead. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about proving that humanity was not to be underestimated, and she couldn't afford to fail now. She had come this far. There was no turning back. The eerie silence of the alien base was soon broken by the sound of boots crunching on the rocky ground. Tessa instinctively crouched behind a large boulder, her rifle ready in her hands. Through the narrow gap between the rocks, she saw the alien soldiers, more of them now, more organized, closing in. It seemed that General Zarek had finally realized the scale of the threat. Tessa didn't hesitate. She took a deep breath, steadied her rifle, and fired. The first alien soldier dropped, and the others scattered in response. The alien general had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back. But now he was learning the truth. Humans didn't back down. Even when the odds seemed impossible, they fought with everything they had. She quickly moved from cover to cover, always staying one step ahead of the enemy. The sound of alien weapons blasting through the air filled the space around her, but Tessa wasn't fazed. She had faced far worse. Every shot she took was precise, every movement calculated. Soon, the aliens started to regroup and adapt to her tactics. They knew she was using the terrain to her advantage, so they began to close in on her position from multiple angles. They were smarter now, but Tessa wasn't worried. She had been training for moments like this her entire life. As she moved deeper into the base, the tension grew. She could feel the presence of the alien general now, his soldiers marching through the corridors in pursuit. She had to face him, but it would be a battle of wills as much as skill. General Zarek had underestimated her. He had underestimated humanity. And now, it was time to prove that humans could face any challenge, no matter how impossible. Tessa found herself in the center of the command hub, the very heart of the alien base. The walls were lined with alien technology, and the glow of monitors flickered eerily in the dim light. She could hear footsteps approaching. General Zarek himself was closing in. As he stepped into the room, his cold eyes locked onto hers. His alien armor gleamed, and his weapon was ready, but there was something different in his stance now. The arrogance that had once filled him was gone, replaced by the quiet realization that this human soldier was not what he expected. "You should have stayed on Earth," General Zarek growled. Tessa raised her rifle, her finger steady on the trigger. "I told you," she said, her voice calm and firm. "We're not cowards. We're humans, and we fight." The final battle was intense. Zarek was a fierce opponent, using every advantage his technology offered. But Tessa was faster. She had the advantage of human ingenuity, and in the end, it was that human spirit, unpredictable, relentless, that tipped the scales. She outmaneuvered him, using the environment to her advantage, and with one final shot, Tessa Hawk brought down General Zarek. The alien general crumpled to the ground, his body falling in defeat. The remaining soldiers, now leaderless, hesitated. The tide had completely turned. For the first time, they saw the truth. Humans were not weak. They were warriors. Tessa stood over Zarek's fallen form, breathing heavily but standing tall. The alien forces, once confident and arrogant, had been beaten. The galaxy would now know the true power of humanity. The air in the alien base was thick with silence after the final explosion. Tessa stood over General Zarek's fallen body, her rifle still in hand. She was breathing heavily, the weight of the battle pressing on her shoulders, but her expression was resolute. She had done it. She had defeated the alien general, the one who had called humans cowards and believed one of his soldiers could defeat them all. Now, the galaxy would know better. Behind her, the alien forces were in disarray. Their once cohesive ranks were scattered, their confidence shattered. Without their leader, the remaining soldiers hesitated, unsure of what to do. The communication systems were down, and they had no way of regrouping or receiving orders. The chaos Tessa had caused had broken their spirit. She could hear the muffled sounds of alien soldiers moving in the distance, but they weren't coming for her now. They were retreating, unsure of how to deal with the human they had so underestimated. Tessa took a moment to gather herself, the weight of her actions sinking in. She hadn't just fought for her life. She had fought for humanity's place in the galaxy. She had proven that humans were not weak, not something to be taken lightly. The pride of the alien alliance had been broken by one human soldier, and it was a victory that would be remembered for years to come. A low voice echoed from behind her. "We never should have doubted you." Tessa turned to see Lieutenant Daniels approaching, his face filled with awe and respect. He had been part of the backup team on Earth, monitoring the situation from afar. "General Zarek is dead, and the forces are retreating," he continued. "You've given us a fighting chance." Tessa nodded but didn't respond. Her mind was still racing, analyzing the victory. The alien general had been a symbol of everything humanity had been up against. His death was important, but the battle wasn't over. There were still many alien factions out there that would never forget this defeat. They would return, and humanity would need to be ready. "We'll need to rebuild," Daniel said, reading the thoughts that crossed her mind. "But today, we've shown the galaxy that humanity is strong. We're not to be feared, but respected." Tessa glanced around the wreckage of the alien base. The signs of the battle were everywhere. Alien machinery, destroyed by the blast, and the bodies of soldiers who had underestimated the power of human resilience. She knew the message would spread far and wide. Humans were not weak. They fought when it mattered. They fought for what they believed in. But the fight wasn't over yet. The alien alliance might be in disarray, but other forces would be watching. Tessa's victory would echo across the galaxy, but she understood that this was only the beginning. They had proven themselves on the battlefield, but humanity's true strength lay in its ability to continue fighting, to rise even when the odds seemed impossible. "We've won," Tessa said softly, her voice steady. "But we're just getting started." Tessa stood on the edge of the alien base, watching the remnants of the once powerful enemy forces retreating into the distance. The dust had settled, and the eerie silence that followed the battle was almost deafening. The alien general, Zarek, was dead, and the alien soldiers had scattered, unsure of their next move. The victory was undeniable, but Tessa felt the weight of it settle heavily on her shoulders. She had done it. She had single-handedly turned the tide for humanity, showing the galaxy what they were truly capable of. But this was not the end. It was only the beginning. She had proven humanity could stand toe-to-toe with the strongest forces in the galaxy, but now she and her people had to prepare for the future. Lieutenant Daniels approached her, his footsteps breaking the silence. His face was tired, but there was a deep respect in his eyes. "You did it, Captain," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "The galaxy will never forget what you've done today." Tessa didn't smile. The battle had cost her, and the victory, while sweet, felt hollow in the face of the bigger picture. "We've won this battle," she said quietly, "but we've only just begun. The rest of the galaxy will watch us now. We've made our mark, but there are more challenges ahead." Daniels nodded, understanding the weight of her words. The alien alliance might be broken, but many other factions and races in the galaxy would be watching Earth. They would see the human spirit, and they would see a force ready to rise again. There was no going back. Humanity had stepped onto the galactic stage, and now they had to prove they could keep up. The next few hours were a blur of activity as Tessa and the remaining human forces gathered the data and supplies from the base. The alien technology was advanced, but it wasn't as mysterious as it had once seemed. Humans had a way of adapting, learning, and using what was available to them. Already, Tessa could see the potential for Earth to rise even higher in the galaxy, using the knowledge they had gained. As the final transport ships left the base, Tessa stood at the edge, watching the stars. Earth was far away, but it didn't feel so small anymore. She had been part of something that had changed the course of history. It wasn't just about winning battles. It was about building a future for humanity in a universe that had once seemed so vast and hostile. She thought of the people back home, families, friends, the soldiers who had sent her off with nothing but hope in their hearts. They would be waiting to hear of her success, and when she returned, she would tell them the truth. Humanity had proven that no matter how advanced the enemy was, no matter how impossible the odds seemed, they could rise. They could fight, adapt, and most importantly, they could win. Tessa took one last look at the destroyed base, the battle scars etched into its metal walls. The fight for Earth was far from over, but she had shown the galaxy that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. With a deep breath, Tessa turned away from the battlefield. The journey ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity's place in the galaxy had just been secured.